It's Reclamation Day!
What does that mean?
It means we played the Fallout 76 beta.
Ah, hot take!
Well, I think that's about that.
Reclamation Day's over?
Yeah, because I played the beta.
Oh no!
Oh, so let's get into things, folks. This definitely is a completely different Fallout experience than I think what anyone was expecting.
Okay, so I want to establish where we're at with the Fallout series.
Sure.
You are the Fallout Pro. You played basically everything, right?
Yeah, everything.
Okay, so I've played...
Not that many games, I guess. It's not hard.
Well, no, there's a lot. There's a lot. You can list them all off. I played Fallout 3, and I played Fallout 4 a little bit, and I played New Vegas.
Okay.
So I want to hear your opinion on 76, because I played some of the newer Fallout games. You played everything, so you have like a very well-rounded knowledge of what's supposed to happen in the Fallout series.
So when I say I've played everything, I've played Fallout 1, I've played Fallout 2, I've played Fallout Tactics, and I've also played Fallout Brotherhood of Steel, which most people haven't played.
Xbox?
Yes. The Xbox version of it. I've also played I've played Fallout 3, New Vegas 4, and I've also played the free-to-play...
Fallout Shelter.
Fallout Shelter,
I
yeah.
forgot about that.
Not that that's a big deal, it's just I've played it. So, look, there is a lot of Fallout material out there, and if you haven't played every Fallout game, I don't think that derates your opinion of this at all, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think you can still have a lot of interesting things to say about this game. But
Okay.
I go back far back, okay?
Yeah.
I've been a fan of games Interplay's been making for years, so I've always been a fan of this specific franchise and the idea of what Fallout was. I was always crazy excited when Bethesda released their games. My favorite of the entire series, New Vegas, hands down.
I hear that a lot, yeah.
New Vegas has the most interesting story, has the most interesting character development, because you truly do mold and shape your character, and you really do feel like you have an impact in your world.
Okay.
You can go back and play that game several different times, and it will always feel different based on little tiny choices you make that have very branching, long distance consequences.
Yeah, it's kind of the things that the mechanic that developers have been saying that they're implementing into games for like the last 10 years, but only one game has really done it all that well.
Yes. Now, Fallout New Vegas
Yeah.
was not made by the folks at Bethesda. It was made by Obsidian.
Yeah.
Now, that isn't to say that Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 are bad games. I like those games quite a bit. Fallout 3 is actually, I think that's one of their best games they've ever made. I love Fallout 3 and its world.
That was where I started. So having not played any of the other Fallout games, that was my introduction into it. And I was like, no, this is great. Because I've always been into RPGs, and this was like melding together the FPS and RPG sort of tactics or whatever so well. Yeah.
So with that in mind, okay, let's just make this very clear on the outset. So what you're getting with Fallout 76, now we've only played the beta, all right? Now that gave us about 4 hours worth of game time. We saw a lot of glitches, we saw a lot of bugs, we will address a couple of those things. To be fair, most of the things I saw were visual-based glitches. They didn't really harm the way that you played the game. And one or two times, one of the servers would kick us off or something like that, but it is a stress test that's supposed to be happening. But I did notice a couple things from those breaks that actually gave me pause to think about playing this game online.
Yes.
But we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah. I didn't play this so much, so I'm as much listening to Shane as you are, and I have questions.
Okay, so first off, if you're a fan of Fallout's narrative and story, and you like the idea of interacting with NPCs, and you like the idea of having those kind of events happen, that's not going to happen in this game, okay? Throughout our 4 hours of gameplay, we crossed a lot of the area. So Virginia, we went over a lot of zones, a lot of areas, a lot of different spaces. There is a very big range of how you see things kind of get darker and grittier in certain areas, or you get to see like red, like dirt and stuff in certain areas that completely shapes and carves the terrain to have a very distinctive visual style. This is definitely visually, in my opinion, an upgrade over 4. Not something that is massive and huge, but you can see that there was a lot of time and effort put into the visual style of this.
Quick question. You said that you'd gone over most of the map for Fallout 76. How big would you say it is? How long would it take you to go from one side of the map to the other? Like, what should people expect?
Well, I guess we were capable of walking
20 minutes
across.
Or something?
You know what? Honestly, I couldn't tell you exactly. It felt about as big as Fallout 4, but we didn't have time to experience
Okay.
the whole thing, but it felt like a big world. Okay, there was a lot there, but it's those little design differences that were really interesting. There was kind of like a mining town that was further up a hill, and when we went up to that mining town, you really got to see like everything turn a little bit darker. The fog in the area started to come in. There was this really cool visual distinction. The best way I can explain this is in Fallout 3, there's a DLC package where you go to Pittsburgh. And during that time, the Pittsburgh area of the game is really dark. It's dingy. It's kind of, it feels like there's coal everywhere and oil, and it's got that same exact feel. And there's several other DLC packs for Fallout that have been released over the past couple of games that give a distinct impression of the world and change the feel of it. So that is a really cool thing, and you can't knock the game for doing that. But with that being said, without characters to guide you around. Now, there are still, like, robotic characters.
Right. I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
Okay. So Fallout 76 takes place before the other Fallout games?
Yes.
Okay.
So Fallout 1 takes place very, very basically in the future compared to where this game takes place. Fallout 76 is, from what I'm to understand from the story, and I could be getting the years wrong. I'm a little bit bad with years. I believe it takes place 25 years after the bombs drop. Okay. People in the vault still remember, some of them still remember, well, one of them, at least the Overseer, remembers what the outside world was like. The main mission, if there is one, is that you're going out and finding all the holotapes that this Overseer had left. Whenever there's a person that you should have been able to interact with in the game world, and we saw this a couple times, it was just somebody dead on the ground. If there was some story elements being given to you, it was on scraps of paper. It was on a terminal on a monitor. It was on anything but interacting with people. In fact, when a world event was happening, this is when some kind of larger event is happening in the game world.
You can team up with other people?
You can team with other people. You'd actually hear about it over the radio, so it would be kind of like, go over here, something's going on. It's your choice whether you want to do that or not, but that was a way that you could be engaging with other players.
So the quests typically in a Fallout game were given to you by other NPCs and some terminals and some other things.
Sure.
Are you so is there only one method in which you're getting quests? Is it just from, because there is a radio telling you what to do?
It's the radio is not always constantly going on.
Yeah.
It only happens every so often.
Right.
And how I felt about this was, in some of the older Fallout games, there's these people that have played Fallout games, and they'll say, oh, every mission's given you through an NPC. That's not true. In Fallout, there are several instances where you find a place, get into the place, and you kind of discover story as you go along. I'm not going to spoil the older Fallout games too much, but on one of the older Fallout games, it's one of the newer releases, not Fallout 1 and 2, there's this specific vault that you find, and when you go inside, you find out that they were actually testing on the people inside with this gas that made them insane. And that idea is really interesting because they play with it as you go along. It's a really cool concept for that one thing, and that felt like a contained story within the game world. This is going to happen here as well, too, but whenever somebody is talking to you, like let's say they're talking to you over a PA system, there is no dialogue tree, there's no way to converse with them, and it feels very one-sided, which is crazy because Fallout 4 introduced a character that had a voice. For the very first time in the series, you could always pick what you'd want to say, but now your character had a distinct voice, and it never felt like you have total control over everything that was going on, because in New Vegas, you really did have that. In 4, it felt like a little bit of a pullback because it seemed that they were focusing more on a different kind of narrative example.
So I want to know, this doesn't seem like it's like branching per se. Does this feel like in my mind, there's like two ways that this is being done. Does it feel like some sort of a linear track that you're on, okay? Or does this feel like a jumble of like a map just filled with points of interest? That's
what it is.
Okay.
So you don't feel like we chose to walk away from everyone else that was playing at one point and just go in our own direction and just see what's going to happen. And we did that, and we could see there was little elements there, here and there, and there was something going on, but there was no story elements. There was no large-scale things. In any normal Fallout game that we've played, something would always happen. In fact, in the older Fallout Fallout games, the first one, I believe, the TARDIS shows up at one point from Doctor Who. It's a joke, right? It's not actually a part of the game world, but it happens. And there's this idea in Fallout 3 at one point, when you're walking around the Capital Wasteland, you'll actually hear some radio frequencies, and if you follow the radio frequencies, you'll find a down alien spacecraft. And then in that space, you'll find like an alien that's dead, and you can actually pick up the ray gun, and it has chargeable, like a chargeable gun pack and stuff, but you only have ammo there. You can't find ammo anywhere else, unless there is one spot, but I'm not going to spoil that.
Didn't that lead into other DLC later?
Later it did, yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
But see, that was the interesting part, right? You had these things happen, and sometimes a person would just walk up to you and ask you for help, or you'd see two people having a conversation. That's how some of the world gets built. Now, the narrative that they are trying to build with Fallout 76 is nobody's out there. So it feels empty. It feels crazy empty. It feels desolate. But there are people out there. You can hear them talking over the radio. You can hear them when there's this one area in the game that we went to where somebody was in like a tower and they were yelling down at you. So you are getting those experiences there. However, they're not as detailed as they've been in other games because they basically have to explain everything going on to a whole group of people. For instance, if one person walks into a room and they engage with an NPC, that NPC is speaking to that one person directly. That means if you were to play online with a group of people, everyone would have to stop and start listening to the NPC. That gives you moments where you can be attacked by somebody. That gives you moments where maybe you just got into the conversation later on and you weren't there to hear everybody talk about it. So this is a very big struggle for the folks at Bethesda to basically counter, so they decided not to have that in there at all. Now, there are going to be a bunch of folks out there that are going to be okay with that because they play Fallout not for the story, but for the gameplay. But when it comes to the narrative, the way that it's been done in the past, it doesn't feel the same. And in my personal opinion, it feels bad. Yeah. It feels like I'm not getting enough interesting story, and I want to see this world being lived in. Even though they chose to make the game take place just so, like the first Vault's opening, it felt like it wasn't enough to warrant what was going on.
It sounds almost a little bit like the story's like doled out in the same way like an MMO would.
It really does.
Like earlier MMOs, maybe with finding letters.
It feels like an old MMO, but without tons and tons of people playing.
Yeah.
As I'm to understand, the servers has a limit, a very small limit of I think around 30 people, and I think that can kind of mess with you on how you're going to play it. So let's talk about the gameplay. Now, the narrative is what it is, but the gameplay is what's going to be your central focus on this. The controls of this game feel very similar to Fallout 4. There's a lot of crafting and stuff like that. The base building from Fallout 4 is in this version of the game. And let me tell you, okay, folks? Base building in Fallout 4 didn't make sense to me. You could build things but not share it with anyone unless you took pictures or video, and just for that alone, I never really felt like I was interested or invested in stuff. There was the points when you were defending a settlement or something like that, and you could build stuff, and that was cool. But in this game, you're building with friends, you're building with a community, and that building is really cool. It feels just the same as Fallout 4. There's been some changes here and there, but there's this one part where we went to an air base. Nobody was around us, so we cleared the air base ourselves, and we got rid of all the super mutants. And yes, super mutants are officially in this game, despite the fact in the storyline they shouldn't be there, but apparently there is something in the world that explains why they're there. We couldn't find it, but apparently it's there. When we were building our base, the moment we captured it, waves of enemies came after us, 3 waves specifically, and we had to defend it. So I had built turrets and stuff like that. There was mining, there was water purification, there was stuff that was going on there that got you resources as you kept a building, and it really looked like you would be able to walk into somebody else's base, attack it, and take it from them. So that was an interesting aspect of this, and I can see roving gangs of players kind of going from one space to the other and fighting each other like that.
Okay, so with there could be the opportunities for you to kind of have like battles with other people within this map, but you were saying that the amount of people that are playing at the same time isn't really a lot per se.
No,
and if the map's as big as Fallout 4, like, are you running into people all that often?
I didn't run into very many people.
Yeah, like
Now,
I was okay. I watched some of the footage from the very beginning of the game. Right, if you're watching the stream, you probably saw me like kicking from like the other side or punching from the other side of the screen or whatever. So I did see like at the very beginning you were around a lot of people and stuff. But like after you walked around a little bit more into the map, like did things just become diluted?
It really felt like it was spaced out and empty because there is very few people playing with you on the server. The map is just so big. Typically when you have a game where there's about 30 people playing, you need more of a confined area so that you can be running into people. But when it's so open, it really does become so open. We came into a couple of instances where people were attacking other people, and it just got annoying. It didn't actually, like, the interaction I had with people never felt good.
Did you do PvP?
We did one instance of PvP, and somebody just killed us right away. There was a point when we were hurt. There was somebody that was fighting in a building, and they were completing a mission, so we went in, and the mission had already partially been completed, so they just killed the last person while we were in the building, and we got points for it. So it kind of felt like loose. Like I missed that entire chunk of gameplay because it already happened.
That almost feels like a janky MMO.
It really does.
To me.
Then there was a moment when we saw somebody going into a building, and we decided to join them, and we tried to ask if we could be their friend and all that stuff. So what they did was we walked in, we got shot, we were hurt. And when we were hurt, you kind of wait until you pass out completely.
A la Borderlands?
Yeah. So they can come and help you. So what he did was he came up and he beat us over the head with a wrench and he killed us. So as soon as that happened, it said you could seek revenge. And I was like, well, yeah, I'm going to seek revenge. He didn't help. So I went to go seek revenge, and then we went we went to go back to the building, and then he was floating in the sky, and then he disappeared. So we don't know exactly what happened there.
No one ever heard from him again.
It was really strange, but again, glitches in a beta. Another thing was we spent a lot of time, about 30 to 40 minutes, building a base, clearing out the super mutants, doing all that stuff ourselves. And then once we built the base, we were pretty happy about it. Then about 30 minutes later, the server reset or booted us or something.
Yeah.
We logged back on, and our base was completely gone. Everything that we put in the stash of that building, that was all the things we collected over that entire time of playing, was completely gone, completely.
Maybe that's just part of the weirdness of the beta.
It could be part of the beta.
Because that seems like that would really turn a lot of people off from this if you're losing the progress you're making.
And see, that right there is my problem. Where did our base go? Where did our materials go? If you're going to be playing for hours and hours, where does that stuff go? Does it remain with your character or does it remain on the server? How can we choose servers? All of these things are put up to question because I don't believe that Bethesda has the best answer for these things, because it does feel like they took Fallout 4, did a new map, made some prettier graphics, and literally just put an online portion to it. Like that's what I felt like we were getting from this experience. And it worries me.
Do you feel like maybe this was something they were working on for Fallout 4, that they were like, no, we can make this our own thing?
You know, it could have been. It could have been that. I tell you, folks, I want to really like this. I'm such a big fan of the Fallout games. To see this play in this way, there are tiny elements that don't work. For instance, when you go to use VATS...
I have a thing. Oh, yeah, thank you. I was just going to ask you.
Okay.
Tell me about VATS, because I've heard not so good things about this.
Okay, I don't want to be like biased on this.
Yeah.
VATS is awful.
Okay.
VATS is the worst I've ever seen it implemented.
Yeah. Originally, VATS, you would stop time or slow down time.
No. In the original games, you stopped time.
Okay.
VATS was introduced as a concept to basically have those RPG mechanics, so you're just not randomly shooting at things.
Right.
Stop and perform an RPG
And there's
action.
the chance element, the roll of the die element
Yes.
is introduced into the game that way.
When you go to play Fallout Tactics, they use the exact same concept. It's basically like it's tactical, right? It doesn't play the exact same way as the other games, but in Fallout 1 and 2, VATS is all about being tactical and knowing what you're supposed to do. It takes the game away from being a randomized cluster to something that is far more precise. When they moved to Fallout 3, New Vegas, and 4, VATS was there, but what they did in Fallout 3 was pretty smart. They would slow down the game, not all the way to pause, but slow it down just enough to give you time to breathe and give you time to think.
That's what I remember from my gameplay with Fallout.
What's going on in the real world is that as soon as you push VATS is targeting, and you get to choose, but what's going on is it's helping you target really quick, and then you're firing, okay? In this world, that's not happening. In Fallout 76, everyone that can use VATS is real time. So your percentage is actually based around a bunch of just random things going on in front of you, and you can't pay attention to it. It's too quick, it's too imprecise. You have to keep moving and doing a bunch of other stuff while VATS is going on. And I tried to use VATS every time near the ending of the server rounds. I kept on going. And by the way, they don't even really teach you how to use all those mechanics. You kind of just have to roll and figure it out. But once we figured it out, the problem was every time somebody would move just off screen, it would go to a 0% chance. We were constantly fluctuating between 95% to 0, 95% to 0. And sometimes when I used VATS on the smallest things like mole rats and stuff, they wouldn't get killed. I couldn't find a good use for VATS, and it completely pulled out any use for me at all from it.
In the original, well, not the original, the Rebirth kind of, Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, I remember that VATS allowed you to target specific body parts, and you weren't necessarily aiming your gun, right?
Yeah.
So in this one, can you kind of blind fire as long as you have the percentage on the screen, or do you have to be directly on?
Okay, so this is the way it seemed to work. It would aim for you,
Yeah.
and even if you didn't get it 100%, it would still hit the person, and I guess that was the benefit to it. But if you could choose body parts, you wouldn't want to. In this game, I would have to argue that Fallout 4, Fallout 3, even New Vegas, they're not shooting games. Like, you're not supposed to be running around and just firing and shooting at people unless you are prepared for that stuff. In this game, you never feel prepared. The enemies can dodge and just run at you as quick as they can.
Does this feel like an RPG/FPS, or does it just feel like an FPS?
FPS all the way. This does not feel like an RPG. There are stats and stuff like that, right? And they've created a new special system that utilizes cards. All that stuff is there, but even in the most basic things where you're gaining a level, the game doesn't stop. So when you're gaining a level and you want to just choose your new perks and stuff like that, you can't do that because you might have people around you. It was really hectic and really wild, to the point that when you want to rest, the world is on a real world, or is on a fast clock. So everyone else is in the same time period that you're in. So if you need to rest, you literally sit or you lay down in a bed and you wait.
Whereas usually it would speed up time, or in other games, like maybe it would fade out and fade in.
This removes so much of the experience. Now, there were some interesting parts. If you're going to play online, you can't save. So those things you would do in the other Fallout games, you'd save something and go, okay, I'm going to try that a different way. I'm going to try that a different way. That's not going to happen in this game. You are going to be playing it, and you are going to be going for it, and that's it.
You got to stick with your choices.
Yeah. But with that being said, and that's fine if they want to do that, I just felt that every experience I had in this game, and I'm keeping in mind that this is a beta, didn't feel good. For them to fix the things, to correct the things that I experienced that were bad problems, that's not just because it's a beta or server load. Servers are going to crash, they're going to go down. Right. Maybe they can fix some other stats and stuff like that. It felt like functional problems with the game. They built a car, it's got an engine, it's got 4 wheels, it's got a steering wheel. No matter what, the car is always going to have that. No matter what variation of the car you're going to get, it's always going to have those things. And when I'm talking about the basics of how this game works, they're always going to have those exact same basics. Now, that to me is a huge problem because I don't see how this game is going to progress beyond that. Personally, I think that there's going to be a lot of people out there that just like the gameplay aspect. And even if you're a fan of Fallout 4's gameplay, you might not like this because you may prefer that stop and wait mechanic.
It sounds drastically different from the way that you play Fallout, or at least from the way that I did. I was typically slow and methodical and saving quite often, which I do in all of, the Bethesda games. But yeah, this just sounds like a straight up first person shooter to me, and less appealing because of that.
The charisma, the intelligence that you have from Fallout 4 and Fallout 3 or even New Vegas, where you can basically, you can't really, there are ways to do a pacifist run, but there are things like that where you're really not focusing on the strength and brutality, you're focusing on talking to people. All that's gone. None of that is in this game. You are not doing that in the slightest. You have to be a fighter. You can't use stealth. You have to keep moving forward in that regard.
So we're losing a bunch of intricacies that made the other game so much more customizable and interesting.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's actually some characters in the game world that, there's villains and stuff like that, and enemies. Some of the enemies do feel like they're in Fallout. Some of them feel way crazy and weird. Like, we saw some kind of flying thing of some sort that just seemed like a dinosaur, which I don't know, maybe existed at this point 25
That sounds
years.
awesome, Shane.
Sure, but there was elements like that in the game, and when I saw these one characters, I think they were called the Cursed or the Forbidden, or they had like green
Okay. I was in the room for that. Yeah, I remember seeing them.
the Charred. Sorry guys, I forget what they were called. Those specific characters were using weapons and they were being tactical and they were moving around and stuff. So when I saw them, I was like, so are they smart or are they just attacking me? What's the story here? What's the narrative? If there was a narrative, and this just explained it, if there was a narrative, if there was something there like that, I completely, totally missed it because it's that easy to miss the story. Remember, if you walked into a building and the story had already started, it's basically going as you've been in there. So these elements do not make a good experience for narrative. I don't feel they make a good experience for gameplay, and it really feels like a wild and crazy and unworking ride for me. But I am pretty sure someone out there is going to like some of the elements that they've presented. It's just, honestly, for me, this didn't work at all. This felt like a very strange experience that doesn't feel like it has enough direction.
Do you think this is the they're building off of like a sort of a blank sort of template? Do you feel like this is the first step towards what will eventually become the final version of Fallout 76, which might offer a better experience? Or does it feel like this is just what it's going to be?
Now, see, you
can't predict the future.
Look, let's just say that there is an entirely new wave of things they've added on, more gameplay, more narrative, and all that stuff. You still have these functional, unfinished parts here, or
tweaked.
Tweaked.
Yes.
It just feels like you're getting the game. It felt like the game was in like before alpha. Like, it really felt like it was super early stages, and nothing they're going to do is going to fix the world from feeling completely open and empty unless they go and add NPC characters and stuff like that. And if they do that, then you're not going to be getting a game that was built around those concepts. You're just going to get characters free walking around the world. What I'm basically saying here is that we were told originally that this game was going to be playable both single player and online, and I could not even imagine wanting to go through this world in a single player instance.
That. Yeah, they said no. From day one, you should be able to play through this single player if you want to, but it's best played in multiplayer. It sounds like it's only played.
No, this is look, folks. I don't care what anyone says. If you play this game offline, you're gonna have a bad experience. Imagine playing Fallout 4 with no story. I mean, look, maybe if you're playing it single player and they fix the VAT system so that you have the slow down time and everything.
The traditional way.
But then there's nothing else to do.
Exactly. If you fix that, that's just one part of like a variety of problems. And one of the reasons that I enjoy the Fallout series the most that I've played is that there's a story there. Yeah. And there's interesting progression to what's going on. Like you said, in New Vegas, you're developing a story that's yours.
Yes.
Right? You're not going to have that.
It really feels like a game that is just so close-minded. And let me make this clear too. What I feel is not non-functional is from the core of the game. When we think of something like Fortnite, when Fortnite came out, it didn't work. It wasn't a very good game. And then they created a Battle Royale mode on top of that, right? The Battle Royale mode worked because in the core of Fortnite, the game still had building mechanics.
There was something there.
And it was still good as a functioning shooter game because of who made it.
Okay.
So with this game, it doesn't work as a shooting game. It doesn't work in a lot of those instances. Even the building aspects, right? Those work great in other games. And in here, if you're building forts, that's a cool thing, but you need more around that stuff. I'm so certain people are going to enjoy this who just like that kind of gameplay and who love that kind of work, but I really feel that a majority of the players out there that are fans of Fallout are not going to be in love with this thing. But folks, you may have seen the beta being played. Maybe you've heard something that I said that you don't agree with. Please let us know what you think in the comments below because I'm incredibly interested to hear what you have to say about Fallout 76.